Welcome back to 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse for Chiller Part 2. Probably going to be a Part 3 to this too, because we're covering a lot of films here that were shown there back in the day. And I'm trying to think what... Bill Karnschmidt asked me something about Supernatural Theater, which was on Channel 9, and that came on... I guess 9:30, 9 o'clock or whatever. It was on WOR. They didn't sort of have, they had the sort of the same weird little montage that Chiller had, except with their own movies. And the best thing they actually had was The Crawling Eye. I mean, here's a movie that really needs a Blu-ray treatment. But that's the only thing I remember. They had The Crawling Eye, Carnival of Souls, some other ones, but I don't think they really lasted that long. And the other one that I remember... And this was on 1 o'clock in the morning. It was called Festival of Chillers, and it was either on Channel 2 or 4. And they had the Universal stuff, the classic stuff, and the Lon Chaney Jr. Inner Sanctum stuff. So that one I can remember. And there was also another late night one. This is probably pushing into the 70s, even close to the 80s, I think. Might have been even later than that. It was on Channel 5. It might have been Creature Feature, and it had a host called the Creep, which was this guy whose face was shadowed. He wore dark glasses, and he was the Creep. His real name was Lou Steele, and I met him when they started doing the Chiller Theater conventions, and he lived close in the area. He lived in Rutherford. The Chiller store was on Park Avenue in Rutherford, and he'd be in there a lot. So I guess, Kevin might have talked him into doing the show. He came into the show with a bunch of 8x10s, and when he saw the line for his table, he just got up, put on his coat, and left, and never came back. It was too much for him. I guess he didn't realize how over he was. But those are the other ones I can sort of remember back in the day. But, when I hit, when I got my driver's license, it wasn't like I was hanging home watching this shit. I was either in New York or at a drive-in, so that's where I went. But anyway, our next film was 1957, The Unearthly, with John Carradine as a mad scientist. Oh, big surprise there, but he's a little bit more intense and manic in this one. Seems that he developed the sixth gland that he's trying to use to cure his wife or do something with his wife. So he has this sanitarium for mental patients out in the middle of nowhere. And he makes sure that the mental patients don't have any family because he's going to use them for experiments. And he puts in this fucking gland, which is really creepy, and does his surgery and zaps them with radiation, and then usually they don't work out too well, and he did like Norman did at Liquidators. He puts them in the basement for later use. Well, this one patient comes in who's Allison Hayes, and he catches a guy snooping around on the grounds, this criminal, who's played by Myron Healy, who's really a secret investigator looking for these lost people. Tor Johnson is a henchman, and Tor actually talks during this thing, for what Tor can talk. These people are all going to be the next little victims of, John's experiments, except that they get away, and John gets killed, and the cops go into the basement where they see this menagerie of mutants. And one cop looks at the other one and he goes, wouldn't it be something if they really did live forever? And that was that. There's something about this film that just creeps me out. I guess it's the medical aspect of it or something, because I really don't like medical stuff in general. But you'd be hard-pressed for mad scientists to top Robert Shane in The Neanderthal Man. Robert is pretty manic to the point where he's pulling his hair up at one point, and for some reason he gets very loud, and sometimes the music reaches the screeching crescendo for no reason. He's developed a regeneration syrup which he injects into a house cat that turns into a saber-toothed tiger. Now you get stock footage of a real tiger roaming around, and then this tiger jumps on the hood of somebody's car, and there's a quick under 30-second shot of a plastic saber-toothed tiger head which gets off really quick. Shane actually injects his, I guess she's Mexican or something, his housekeeper, and unbeknownst to her, he takes pictures of her while she's regressing. And this, when I was a kid, this really freaked me out because they're flipping these pictures and she's getting creepier and creepier until she's out and out fucking scary. So Robert decides to inject himself with the stuff, turning into this morphing. Some of it's, I guess, I don't know, that fade effect when they used to do it with Lon Chaney Jr. with the Wolfman semi-makeup, then fade away, whatever. But the bottom line is he's wearing a friggin' mask at the end, and of course he goes out and creates some havoc, and it all ends when he gets in a pitched battle with the saber-toothed tiger. And he's laying on bed all chewed up and bleeding, and he reverts back into the doctor. This also was put out, actually it was on a double feature DVD with Beast from Hollow Mountain from Shout Factory, which might be out of print at this point. Our next, also from 1957, is a Bird-Eye Gordon classic, The Cyclops. And this one stars Lon Chaney Jr. and Gloria Talbot. It seems that Gloria Talbot's fiancé was down in this valley of Mexico looking for uranium. So she charters a plane with oil guy, I guess maybe it was not oil, uranium guy, Lon Chaney Jr. He's this rich guy looking for uranium, with a couple other people, and they go down there, and for whatever reason, in the middle of everything, Lon just turns around and punches the pilot in the face. Made no sense. But they land in a world of, Bird-Eye Gordon blowing up lizards and spiders and shit like that, because there's a lot of radiation in the valley due to the uranium. Well, the showstopper is that they go into this cave, and the boulder is pushed in front of the cave, and this horrible giant pops up from behind the boulder with one big eye, half his face screwed up, and snarling teeth. It's Dean Parkin, who was also in War of the Colossal Beast. And this was the fiancé. So I know that Lon Chaney Jr. does something to get himself killed, and the others escape, and then they kill the giant by throwing a flaming spear into his eye, and blood pours out, and that's the end of the Cyclops. Like I said in the other one, some of these films are a little bit rougher than others, which may have been why they were dumped on Channel 11. But, well, you go back to 1954, and this was an early Roger Corman production. I think it was directed by Wyatt Oradon, and starred a very young Jonathan Hayes in Monster from the Ocean Floor. This is a little California beach community that is being terrorized by some creature that's basically making people disappear. There's a really creepy moonrise scene where you see a cow on the beach for some reason, and then in the background you just see this one-eyed thing rise from the sea, and then they cut away, and the next morning the cow's harness is there, but not the cow. I guess this thing dissolves people. Well, anyway, they take a one-man mini-sub down to the ocean floor where they encounter the creature and basically kill it by ramming the mini-sub through its one eye. That's two movies where we had eye damage. Also from 1957, this film is really weird and creepy. It's called The Vampire. And actually, there's no vampire per se in it. It's about some researcher in this old house that the local doctor has to call on him, played by John Beals, who finds this guy dying, and this guy has something on a tape recorder and gives Beals a bottle of these experimental pills that he got from extracting this stuff from a vampire bat. Okay, so in the confusion, when they get home, Beals' daughter gives him the wrong pill. And there's something with these pills is once you take one, you're addicted to them. Well, something happens and he runs out in the middle of the night and he goes to see this patient who basically had taken ill overnight after he just saw her the following day, preceding day rather. So he goes over to see her and she recoils in terror and has a heart attack and dies. But there's two pinprick punctures on her throat. So there's more shit going on because they're trying to figure out they had this one guy who comes in with another character actor, Dabbs Greer, who was in a bunch of these things, and also Kenneth Tobey as the main cop. Dabbs Greer has an assistant that's sensitive to light, and something happens later on that Beals is hanging out and asking him a lot of questions, and then Beals supposedly goes home, but doesn't, and attacks this guy and does the same thing. He doesn't realize that he's doing it, though. So there's a bunch of rigmarole going around here with what's going on, and they decide to exhume the first victim after being buried for 3 days. Well, this is one of those, when you're a kid, you're, holy fuck! They open the coffin, and there is this putrefied face looking up at you, and they say, well, this wouldn't happen normally after 3 days. That scene scared the shit out of me. So the doctor's assistant, nurse, whatever, is going home after waiting for him to come out, which he doesn't, and he's stalking her on the way home. She just about gets into her door, but then he attacks this little old lady walking a dog. So now they're pretty sure what's going on, and he's going to commit suicide, and he tells his nurse to leave, but she won't leave, so he knocks her out. Then he morphs into this thing. Well, he gets in a pitched battle with the cop, Kenneth Tobey, and eventually gets shot 3 or 4 times, and that's the end of him. I can't really do this justice. This thing was basically another film that was picked up by Shout Factory and restored, and it looks really good. It's a creepy, nasty little film that doesn't shy away from some real horrific scenes. And I guess our last film for today's show would be The Immortal Monster of Piedras Blancas, aka the film that broke my nose. I might have said this before in a previous show. This film was shot in California. It's about a lighthouse keeper who's basically leaving meat scraps out for some unknown creature to eat. And when it opens up, he's telling these 2 brothers not to fish off the reef, and then the brothers are found later with their heads ripped off. He's feeding this creature who was made up of, now this is interesting, this is all from Universal, the mole people hands, the Metaluna mutant feet, the creature from the Black Lagoon body, and this hellish, snarling, demonic head. And Jeannie Carmen and Don Sullivan are the teen lovers. Another character actor, Les Tremaine, is a local doctor. And they break a couple taboos here because in one scene there's a father carrying the corpse of his daughter up the street being followed by the townspeople, and it's obvious that she ran into the monster and it ripped her head off. That was a big taboo back then because, you know, aside from the original Frankenstein, you didn't fuck with kids. That broke that taboo. The one shopkeeper, this guy Kolchak, has been spouting about this monster, this and that, and they're trying to shut him up, except he's working late one night, and you see the shadow of this creature approach his store, then you see the shadow fall on him, and they cut away. Well, this little kid goes away from the funeral of the 2 brothers that got killed and goes into the store to buy candy and finds Kolchak, and he runs up screaming, "Mom, Mom, I found Mr. Kolchak. He didn't have any head." So they tell one guy to put Kolchak's body in his freezer while they go look for the monster, which they don't find. When they come back, they can't find the guy who put Kolchak's body in the freezer. The sheriff goes in the freezer and comes staggering out wounded as this roar is heard, and this creature comes out of the freezer holding a severed, ripped off, bloody human head. Well, that's where I lost my shit, because now I'm scared out of my fucking mind. I get up to turn the TV off, trip over the hassock, and crash and hit the fucking TV with the bridge of my nose, shattering my nose and bleeding all over the place and having to go to the ER. So I had to catch this later on the second run, because they kept running this, every once in a while. So after that, they're trying to corner the monster. They find the head in a cave with crabs chewing on it and shit like that. But the monster heads back to the lighthouse where Jeannie Carmen is and grabs her and carries her up the lighthouse. Her father tries to knock this thing off but gets thrown off the lighthouse. The thing is sensitive to light, so after Jeannie gets away, Don Sullivan's fighting this thing on there and somebody else turn on the light. And he turns on the light and the creature backs away from it. He smashes it and the thing goes flying off into whatever. Could have been open for a sequel because we're not really sure whether this thing hit the water or hit the rocks. But anyway, this film pushed the envelope in a lot of ways, and like I said, scared the shit out of me, and that was my first broken nose. Not my last broken nose, but my first one. So that's all we got for you today. We'll work on the rest of them in a future episode. So until then, thanks for subscribing, thanks for tuning in, thanks for telling your friends, and I will have those t-shirts that I've been pushing because they're on Teespring. Well, I took a little leap of faith here because a couple people, wanted them, but I can sell them without shipping for $20. So when I have them in house, I will let you know, and you can probably buy them directly from me instead of Teespring. So that's it for today. We're out of here. Oh, sorry.